All right, it's 6:10. I think I'll kick things off. So thank you everyone for coming to this virtual meeting for the North Coast Highway 101 Drainage Improvements Projects. This is our community participation plan meeting for this project. So a little bit about meeting procedures. So this is a Zoom. We haven't done very many community participation meetings with Zoom. So there's some growing pains and some challenges along the way. And we apologize that we're not able to be face-to-face, but with the pandemic ongoing, this is the safest way for us to meet with you guys and get your input. The purpose of this meeting is to discuss the North 101 drainage project specifically. We understand that there are other drainage issues in the city of Encinitas and in Leucadia, but this is specific to the improvements that we're proposing tonight, which are on the North 101 between Basel and La Costa. So you can type questions in along the way into the chat function. If it's specific to a particular slide number, you'll see the page numbers at the bottom right corner. So you can see this is slide 4. So you can type in slide 4, I have a question about X, Y, or Z. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll have some time to go through those questions and provide you some answers. So again, North Coast Highway 101 Drainage Improvements Project. This is the items we're going to cover tonight. So we'll talk about the project location, the need for the project, an overview, opportunities and constraints, hydrology and hydraulics, concept plan, construction methods, environmental analysis, project benefits, and then a potential project schedule to move this forward. So this is the north end of Leucadia. The green area you see shaded there represents all the area that drains to Highway 101 currently. So it is the area that is west of the NCDD tracks, south of La Costa, north of Basel Street. So why do we need this project? So if you're familiar with the 101, you drive the 101, you're familiar with what happens out there. So during moderate or heavy rainstorms, we get ponding on the 101, which impacts the vehicular travelers, cyclists, pedestrians, residents, and the businesses in the area. So we're looking for a way to alleviate the flooding along the 101. So then what is our project going to be? So between Basel and La Costa is approximately 1.5 miles. So we're looking to add 1.5 miles of new storm drain main line with additional inlets and connections along the way to gather the runoff that ponds currently at low spots throughout that corridor. So we'll create larger inlets to get the water and the runoff off the roadway quickly. New inlets at Leucadia Roadside Park, where we have a big ponding problem during most rain events. And we'll be adding Green Street improvements to improve water quality. So the inlets that are in there in the 101 currently are decades old. They don't have any best management practices for stormwater. So this will be an improvement to the water quality in this area as well. And then we're not going to change the existing pipe outfalls. So all of this water currently drains to the north through existing pipes, and we're going to keep those pipe outlets the same. So when undertaking this project, we wanted to look at the opportunities and constraints or challenges for this project. So we see an opportunity to reduce flooding along the 101, to add new stormwater treatment to the runoff. An opportunity is that the project is entirely within city right-of-way. We don't need to get any new easements or right-of-way to construct this project. And the new hotel project just built an energy dissipator for stormwater runoff at the north end of the project. So we'll be able to use that new facility in conjunction with this project that we're planning. And then what are the constraints for the project? So we have existing utilities that are underground that we need to understand their location and make sure that our alignment doesn't impact them or figure out where they need to be relocated. There's traffic. So our intent, of course, is to construct this drainage in the highway. So there will be impacts to traffic as the project is constructed. And along with that, along with any construction project on the 101, there will be impacts to the businesses and residents. But of course, our hope is having the short-term impact to those businesses and residents will have a long-term benefit as we address the flooding there. The pipe will be relatively deep, 25 feet or so at its very deepest. So that presents some challenges, particularly with groundwater. When you're digging that deep, you may have kind of a wet excavation, which makes it more challenging. And there might be sandy soil, which is also challenging to excavate in. So what did we do to figure out how to size the pipes in the area? So first we had to look at hydrology. And hydrology is basically trying to understand how much water is coming into the area that we need to capture. So as I mentioned before, and I showed in a previous slide, that green highlighted area is about 200 acres. So that's the tributary area. All the rain that falls in that green polygon flows down to the 101 and needs to be captured. Next, we look at intensity, duration, and frequency curves. So looking at what is the intensity of a storm that we expect to get in this area. Duration, how long do we expect it to rain that hard? And frequency, are we looking to address a storm that would happen once a year, once every 15 years, once every 25 years, once every 100 years? And then finally, by combining that information, we're able to calculate the runoff volume that we need to capture and get off the roadway. So now that we have our volume of water that we need to capture, then we went into our hydraulic design, which is figuring out what pipe sizes we needed in order to convey the water off of the 101 and outlet it. So as I mentioned before, we're not going to have any changes to the outfalls. What we're going to do is provide big new pipes under the 101, and they range in diameter from 36 inches all the way up to 66 inches. And that's meant to pull the water quickly off of the 101, store it underground, and then it will be metered at the outlet because the outlets are a smaller diameter pipe. So that, that additional large diameter pipe will store some of that water. Instead of having it sit on the roadway, it'll be stored underground in the new pipes. So this is a concept plan of our proposed project. You can see the different colors along the 101. They represent the different mainline pipe sizes. So it starts off at 36 inches down by Basil Street, increases to 48 inches at Cadmus. At Leucadia Boulevard, we're accepting all the water from the Leucadia Roadside Park, so we need a larger diameter pipe. So it's 60 inches between Leucadia to a little bit north of Moorgate. And then at the very end, we need a small section of 66-inch pipe. And then the little inset that you see here is a junction structure where we have some pipes coming together and then outletting in different directions. So it splits the outlet so that the smaller storms with not that much water, those all go to the west towards Ponto Beach. And then when we have very large storms, that junction structure will fill up with water and it may outlet to the east side of the 101. So then a question that comes up is, how are we going to install this, this new pipeline? And really that's up to the contractor. What we'll do is, if this project were approved and we get all our permits, when we put the project out to bid, the lowest responsible and responsive construction contractor will tell us how he proposes to construct it. So there's two typical methods that we see. One is open trench, and that's the picture on the top to the left. That's your standard construction method. It's typically less expensive. It may take more time than the other method we're going to discuss. And then when we have challenging soils, it can be more difficult and take a little bit more time. The other option you see at the lower right is microtunneling. That uses a specialized construction equipment and techniques where you're boring under the soil. So you have an opening at the beginning of the pipe, an opening a little bit further down, and you're going to basically kind of push that pipe from one end to the other. It can be more expensive. It's typically a faster installation, but it can be harder to identify conflicts. So you may not know if there's a big rock in the way or if there's a utility that wasn't identified until you hit it. So those are a couple of the different construction methods that are available. So after we set our alignment and our inlets and our pipe, we did an initial environmental analysis of the alignment. So we looked at biology, water quality, and paleontology. So for biology, we identified the existing biological resources. We looked at birds and plants and fish and any kind of species that may be out there, including listed species or species of particular concern. And then we reviewed the potential impacts to any of the biological resources out there. We looked to see if there could be concerns with erosion stemming from these new pipes, dilution or salinity depression in the outlet areas, new sedimentation or pollutant load. And after analyzing and reviewing those 4 factors, we found that our current design does not have an adverse impact on biological resources. Next, we looked at water quality. So we took a look at the pre and post-project conditions, and then we evaluated potential impacts to water bodies, surface water, wetlands. This project was designed to meet the Regional Water Quality Control Board's standards and requirements. So by adhering to those standards, our design does not have any adverse impacts on water quality. Next, we looked at the paleontology of the area. So we identified the geological units that may be impacted. So there's a bay point formation that will impact through at least probably half of the project from the midpoint north. And then in the very deepest parts, we may also impact the Santiago formation, which underlies the bay point formation. So in our very deepest excavations, we may encounter those formations. So what we found is we'll need to have a paleontological monitor on site when we're excavating in those areas. So those folks will be reviewing the excavation, looking to see if there are any artifacts that are uncovered. If there are, then they will salvage, clean, catalog, and donate those artifacts. And then at the end of the project, they'll do a paleontological report summarizing their findings. Next, project benefits. So we wanted to see the benefits that we would have if we address and reduce the flooding. So we'll have benefits to the vehicles that are traveling the 101, cyclists along the 101, pedestrians along the 101, and then of course the businesses and residents along the 101. It will benefit all those user groups. By adding new best management practices and stormwater amenities, we're going to reduce our pollutant load over what we're doing now by having more biofiltration, dispersion, and landscaping to filter out some of those pollutants that right now are just going right into the storm drain system. So then what's our path forward? So we've completed our concept design. We've got CEQA technical studies complete. I just mentioned those. We're here tonight to gather public input. After this, our next steps would be to obtain our coastal development permit. And then the most likely path forward is that we would construct these drainage improvements as part of a subsequent phase of the Leucadia Streetscape project, potentially a phase 2 project. If that were the case and City Council approved the funding and we got our permits in line, we could begin construction of a phase 2 with these improvements as early as summer 2021. So that is my final slide. We will go through any questions that anyone has. I've got the concept plan back up here. One thing I didn't mention on my last slide that I wanted to mention here is these yellow dots that you see along the alignment are new or improved inlets, and there are 77 along the corridor. So it is a comprehensive effort to address all the areas that currently have flooding and ponding. So with that, I will see if Andrew can help us out with the first question.
Yeah, so we had a series of questions from one gentleman, looks like John. The first one, you want me to read the series? It's, what do you mean there will be no changes to the pipe outfalls? You're attaching new upstream pipes, so the flow will change, will it not? That's kind of the first question of his.
So what I mean is we're not doing any construction at the outfalls. So we are connecting our big pipe to this junction structure here. And then the existing pipes that are there now are going to be the same after this project is completed. So there may be an overall increase in the volume that comes through those pipes, but we're not making any changes. We're not excavating or doing any kind of construction at those outfalls, either at Ponto Beach or at Iquitos Lagoon.
Thank you. And then the next one is, how many pipes will inflow to the junction box and what are their diameters?
So it's just the one pipeline. It's 66 inches right before that junction structure. And then it splits into 3 different pipes, which again, you can see kind of in this little graphic down here.
And the next question was, does the junction box have additional inlets that will not be occupied by this project?
No, there are no additional inlets. So again, we've got 77 inlets through this entire 1.5 mile stretch that all dump into that 36 or 48 or 60 or 66 inch pipe. And then those all come together and then they enter that junction box and then exit in 3 different locations.
Okay, and the next one, the same gentleman, what is the expected contaminant load in the stormwater?
I'm not sure. I mean, I can't quantify that, but the improvement that you'll see here is that currently there are 2 existing storm drains out there. There's an 18-inch storm drain and a 24-inch storm drain that are currently draining the 101. And they don't have any stormwater best management practices. So we have a requirement by the regional board when we have a project like this that we need to include stormwater best management practices. So the benefit of this project is we will have dispersion areas and landscape areas and biofiltration areas that will filter out some of those pollutants after the project that right now are just going into the pipe and being outlet.
Thank you. And then the next question is, how much of the stormwater will leach into the ground around the pipe?
So this will be a brand new system. So we don't expect there to be any pipe failures. You know, we'll have to manage and monitor our inspection carefully and closely. But this is a deep excavation, so we are going to take great care to not have to go back out there and address any kind of failures or leaks or anything like that. But brand new system, we don't anticipate there will be leaking at the pipe.
Thank you. And then a new gentleman, Paul Fleck, apologies if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but what about drainage from Vulcan? Where would Vulcan drain?
So Vulcan is a separate tributary area. I know we have other projects in development that are looking at the Leucadia area as a whole. So I don't have any information on that project. Tonight, we're here to address and answer questions that are specific to the 101 drainage.
Thank you. And then it's Diana Nunez, I believe. And then what are the ramifications of this proposed system on the flooding and ponding on Vulcan Avenue?
So this is a project to address the flooding on the 101. So it will not have an appreciable impact on Vulcan.
Okay. And then another question from John from the original questions. Haven't you just put in a new junction box?
We have not. So there is a project that's out in construction now. That's Leucadia Streetscape Phase 1. And that's putting in a new storm drain from Basil Street south to A Street. So we put in a new larger storm drain system at the south end of Leucadia. But this would be a new, there is no other new junction structure in this area.
Okay, we have a question from Dar, which may need some clarification, but he's asking, what do you mean here now? Not sure what that was referencing.
We'll have to come back to that one.
Okay. The next one is from Tim. What are the approximate dates for full completion? I'm aware you mentioned summer 2021 for phase 2, but just general approximate dates for completion.
we still need our city council to prioritize projects for the next fiscal year and the fiscal year beyond that. So they will set the priorities and they will tell us what the limits of the project will be and how much of the, how big the next streetscape phase 2 will be. So how long it takes to construct that will depend on how big a project we're going to do with our next phase.
Okay. And then John, it looks like he had another question about the junction box, not the main pipe, but there's a clarification from a previous. Oh, haven't you put in a new main pipe? Has there been any new main pipes it looks like put in recently too?
So I think that goes back to my last question. So we have a construction contract that's out there now that's putting in new pipes from Basil South to A Street. That work hasn't actually begun yet. Or perhaps what they're referring to is when the hotel project came in that's right at the north end of the 101 by La Costa, that project did some drainage work. But that was not a city project, that was drainage work to accommodate the hotel site.
Sure. And then we have a question from Tim again. Looks like in the meantime, what are the current plans to address kind of current flooding conditions while we're processing any projects?
So we'll rely on the diligent work and help from our public works team to help us manage the flooding that happens out there currently. But there won't be any change to the status quo until we're able to go out there and put in some new drainage infrastructure.
Thank you. And then Dar Jacobson again, he asked, what is the timing to do this project and cost?
So again, we're not quite sure on the timing yet. We need to wait for City Council to prioritize the next year's capital projects. And then they will tell us how much of the next improvements of streetscape we will lump together with this drainage project. So that cost is unknown at this time.
And then a question from John, where's the analysis studies that support this project?
So the City of Encinitas has them, they're public records. So if you're interested in obtaining a copy, you can send us your email address and we can get you those studies.
Perfect. And then a question from Dara shares, I came in late to kind of some Zoom changes. Where the dispersion areas are where? Maybe you could just touch on those again, where those dispersion areas are going to be located.
So they're located throughout the project. We have dispersion areas, which are basically planted areas where the stormwater can flow through the planted areas and then back out into the gutter. They're throughout the entire project length, so there's many of them.
Okay. Question from Paul, the volume between at 24 inches and 66 inches is an area difference of 7.56 times. Since it's a square of radius, so how long will it take to drain a full 66-inch pipe?
Does anyone on our design team have that information? I don't have that at my fingertips. I don't see any volunteers. That may be something we'll have to get back to the person on with more information.
Okay. Question from Tim, will water come from the east side of the railroad tracks to the east side? This has a big problem in the past due to tide flux valve across from RCP. It's supposed to stay closed, but Public Works opens it and the Leucadia roadside park and alleyway behind the Leucadia Plaza can flood.
So I know there's a sluice gate that can bring water across from the Vulcan side to the 101 side. That is being addressed in the project that is the phase 1 of Leucadia Streetscape. So the new storm drain that we're putting in between Basil and A Street should alleviate the need for that sluice gate that brings drainage across. And then we're adding several new inlets at Leucadia Roadside Park, so that we make sure that the existing inlet there isn't overwhelmed and we can drain that water into that new 60-inch pipe so that it's not ponding there and then impacting the neighboring businesses and residences.
Then looks like we have a question from Dar. What is the current average annual volume we are containing or redirecting?
I don't believe we measure that. Again, we rely on our fantastic public works team to go out there at all hours of the night, 24/7, when there's a big rain event. And they do their best to alleviate the flooding where they can, suck up that water, bring it to a sanitary sewer system, or bring the water elsewhere. But we don't calculate that, and it would depend on the size of the rain event. So every rain event brings a different amount of runoff down to the 101.
And a question from John. What junction structure will be used to do the metering?
So again, it's this one that you see on the picture here. So it's not mechanically metered, but it's physically metered, meaning the water will come in from the 60-inch pipe and it will fill up that box, and then it will outlet through those pipes. And if there's if the outletting pipes take a particular amount of time to dispel the water, then that's the amount of time that the water is going to sit in that 60-inch pipe upstream. But again, the intent here is that we pull the water off the surface and we store it in that 60-inch pipe so that it's not impacting the people up on the ground.
Okay. And then a question from Dar. Can you review what is happening per water at Moorgate? And then also was just clarifying that here and now was used in your answer to the first question. So the question is, can you review what is happening per water at Moorgate?
So at Moorgate, you can see there's a couple new inlets over here. This project is intended to be constructed alongside a next phase of Leucadia Streetscape. And when the Streetscape project comes through, it's going to change some of the grades along the road. So when that happens, there will be two low spots near Moorgate, and we'll have two new inlets that will take that water and bring it into the 60-inch pipe so that it's underground.
Okay, thank you. And then a follow-up from Tim. So people keep asking about water from Vulcan Avenue. This is because water can come from that side if the valve at RCP is open. It floods the alley if open.
Right, so I talked about that a little bit. We have a project that's further to the south that is addressing that project or that problem, and will eliminate the need for the sluice gate and to bring the water across. So our project that's going to be south of here will address that concern.
Correct. And then Dar asks, how will traffic be affected? Do autos use one lane or a question mark?
So this project is meant to be constructed with a subsequent phase of Leucadia Streetscape. Our Leucadia Streetscape project will modify the configuration of the 101 from 2 lanes in each direction to 1 lane in each direction. While that project is being constructed, they will also install the storm drains. So there will be K-rail and lane shifts and things like that to accommodate the construction of not just this deep storm drain pipe, but also the new infrastructure associated with Leucadia Streetscape. So that's the wider sidewalks and the buffered bike lane and things like that.
And then a question from Paul. Will this free up vacuum trucks to deal with flooding in other parts of Encinitas?
Certainly. So whatever Vector trucks are currently addressing 101, where we have a high volume of vehicles and potential to have unsafe conditions on the road. If there's big puddles, those certainly could be sent elsewhere, since this project will address and alleviate the flooding under most storm events.
And then we got a follow-up question from Dar. How long will it take to do this project?
Unclear. So again, this will be looped into the next phase of a streetscape project, and we're not sure yet we haven't received direction from council yet on how big the next streetscape phase will be. So we're not sure how long.
Okay. And then a question from Brenda. Do the inlets east to 101 provide stormwater relief to Vulcan?
No, the Vulcan is a different tributary area. So the water that lands on the 101 comes from the west side of the 101 because the railroad tracks are higher than the 101 for the most part. So they act as kind of a barrier and they keep the Vulcan water on the Vulcan side.
Okay. Then Dara had a follow-up, I believe it's to the very first question that were asked. And it was about the existing pipe outfalls. Maybe we could just touch on that real fast. And then are you attaching new upstream pipes so the flow will change or not? I believe it's those questions.
So the total volume of water that will be moved through those pipes will be increased. So they will be flowing basically for a longer period of time to outlet a larger volume of water, but we're not increasing the diameter of those pipes, and we aren't doing any construction by those pipes. So if right now there's just an 18-inch and a 24-inch that are connected into this system, we'll have a 60-inch pipe, so there will be a larger total of volume that will take a lot longer time to outlet.
Okay. Then a question from John. What interactions have you had with the city of Carlsbad about discharge increases to Vatican's Lagoon?
I don't know. Ed, do you know of our interactions with Carlsbad on this project?
We've only basically started with that. We've talked to their city engineer, but we're gonna engage Carlsbad a lot more.
Okay. Next question from Dar. Why is there not a calculation of the average annual water that we're trying to contain or redirect?
There is, so that's contained in the hydrology that we do. So that was the slide. Let me get back here. That's this slide. So we do. So we calculate the volume of water that we expect. Excuse me. Expect to fall in the area to the west of the 101 and drain towards the 101. So we do have a volume that we've calculated that we need to drain off of the 101. I don't have it at my fingertips, but it's included in the studies that we've done of the for the project.
Okay. And then a question from John. How will sedimentation of the 60-inch pipe be handled?
Sorry, 1 second, I need water. So one of the water quality studies we did looked at sedimentation and whether we expect to see an increase. And our calculations, because of the fact that right now there are no best management practices on our existing pipe system. And right now we have a lot more paved area. In the future condition, once we have streetscape, we'll have less paved area, more landscape areas, more dispersion areas, and more best management practices. Our study calculated what we think the impacts will be, and it was a de minimis finding, so a negligible increase that would not impact the water quality of the area.
Okay. Follow-up question from Diana. Are there design opportunities to future the system to allow for future connection for drainage solutions along Vulcan Avenue?
So Vulcan Avenue is a separate tributary area. As I mentioned before, the city has other projects that are in the hopper that are looking at drainage in other areas, including Vulcan. But that's a separate project, and that will have a separate community input meeting when that one comes forward.
Thank you. And then a question from Paul. After implementation, how often will 101 flood?
So that depends on how big the rain events are that come. This system by itself is intended to address a storm event that occurs once every 25 years. When future drainage projects come along, the overall area may be outfitted for larger storm events, but this project in particular will address up to a storm event we'd see so large that we'd see it only once every 25 years.
Okay. Question from Tim. If traffic is impacted, where will delivery trucks park? Alleys where people live are already affected by deliveries. We often get stuck in our own driveways.
Yeah, so this project will be constructed as part of Streetscape. So the Streetscape project will be adding new reverse angle parking and parallel parking along the corridor. And then during construction, we will require the contractor to make sure that there is continuous access to all the residents and businesses that would be impacted by the project.
Perfect. And then a question from Dar. If you know it could start in summer 2021, do you have an estimate approximately of the total time to complete this part of the streetscape, the overall timeline just for this scope?
So this scope is meant to be constructed along with other streetscape projects. We wouldn't want to impact the 101 and all the vehicles along the 101 and the neighbors twice. So this will more likely than not be mixed into another Leucadia streetscape phase, and we just don't know the size of that next phase and how long it would take to construct. I would guess it would be at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years for the next phase. And again, we need to wait for City Council to make their priorities known and to fund the projects that they believe will bring the most benefit to the community. So construction is not funded yet. We'll wait to see if it gets funded for next year.
Then a question from John. The buildup of sediment and then the pipes, how will you clean it out?
So along with all these 70 inlets, we have probably over 100 junction structures. So anytime there's a new pipe joining that main line, we have a manhole so that we are able to have our public works team go in there and do whatever kind of maintenance or sediment removal or trash removal might be required in the pipe system.
Okay. And then from Manion, looks like some people got stuck on the another Zoom link. Is the amount of water going into Basque Lagoon expected to change?
So there may be, I'm not sure, Joanne or Bob, is that something that you guys can answer?
Yeah, hi, this is Joanne Tyler with Michael Baker. The volume of water going into the Vatican Lagoon is likely not changing because of overland flow that occurs to go there now. What's being directed via the pipe volume obviously is increasing, but again, like you mentioned, Jill, is being metered at the junction box.
Okay. And then next question is from Dar. I travel 101 almost daily. After big rains last year, what is the prime reason this project is being proposed? Can you give 3 primary reasons?
3 primary reasons. So we want to make the roadway safer for our vehicular travelers, and we want to make the area safer for our cyclists and for our pedestrians. But the reason why we're tackling it now is the City Council has prioritized Leucadia streetscape in general and is moving forward with the first phase now. And it wouldn't make sense to do the next phase of Leucadia streetscape without building this underground infrastructure. We wouldn't want to build a beautiful new roadway and then come in and dig it up. So the timing of it is that it should be incorporated into the next phase of streetscape so that we keep our future 101 streetscape looking beautiful.
And it looks like Dara, kind of similar. Is the streetscape the main reason? I think you addressed that. John, 25-year storm means a 25% chance of happening in a year, not every 25 years. Do you understand that concept?
I do. So a simple way to say it is, the average is once every 25 years, but yes, that is another way to convey that same message. So it could happen 4 times in a year. It's just not expected to.
Okay. And then follow-up, it looks like a question for Joan. Did that person say that the volume of stormwater delivered to Basque in each storm event will not increase?
So I was just going to preface this by saying that the topography here slopes to the north. So although we're pulling the water underground, all that water is heading north towards Batiquitos Lagoon and Ponto Beach now. So Joanne, I'll let you kind of follow up with whatever you may.
Right. Yeah, what I was saying is that it's not necessarily increasing a large amount because we're putting it into a pipe. A certain amount of the overland flow does travel that way via overland flow right now currently.
Okay. And then another question. Yeah, for Mannion. It sounds like people are stuck in another Zoom meeting but cannot find the new meeting. Can you please relink? That's been posted online. Is that correct, Jill, or do we have someone else?
Yes, so we updated the link in online, so that hopefully will allow people to come on over. I see a significant increase in the number of people that are over here now.
Okay. What will happen to the water that is currently pumped onto the beach at Beacons?
So that typically happens from Leucadia Roadside Park. So the intent is to capture that water, and instead of having to pump it there, it would enter into the storm drain system. And under most rain events, it would go north toward and then to the west toward Ponto.
Thank you. And then also looks like Lillian Doherty, our director, also posted a link for that Zoom link if anyone needs to deliver that to anyone. Okay. Isn't that more water for Batiquitos? I think it was a follow-up question from John.
Sure, I suppose the small amount of water that we pump now from Leucadia Roadside Park, that would be a new addition to Batiquitos. But if we didn't pump it, it eventually could make it into the storm drain system. It would make it into the storm drain system and go to Batiquitos Lagoon. So it's just in the very large storm events where our existing system is overwhelmed that we divert some of it. But under normal rain events or smaller rain events, they go into the pipes and head that way currently. That's what the design is currently.
Perfect. I think a follow-up to that same question, isn't more water for Batiquitos? And he also asks how small?
How small with respect to what?
Isn't more water, sounds like isn't more water going for Batiquitos, but how small? Yeah, I don't understand that. Maybe you can clarify, John. I'll follow up on the next one. Oh, John said the amount of water that you said was a small amount going into Batiquitos?
Yeah, so again, we don't calculate the volume of flow that we're pumping into beacons. That I see Bob has turned on his camera. I don't know if he wanted to tackle that one.
Sure. Thanks, Jill. This is Bob Stark from Michael Baker International. I think a key message to get across here is we are always focused on the first flush when it comes to pollutants. None of the first flush will enter the lagoon. So nothing that is being constructed as part of this project, and the stormwater capture, that first flush where all the contaminants and the car oils that are on the streets and bags of dog poop or whatever might be there, none of that enters the lagoon. So this captures all of that. So anything when the junction box that you see on your screen, when there is such a huge storm event, this 25-year storm event and beyond, when water only then begins to come into Vatican Lagoon, we study that amount of flow. There's a dissipator structure there. So you don't have water quality impacts because that water coming out has already been treated, that first flush. So it's clean water coming in. So the amount of water doesn't necessarily impact, what our study design was here, because that's all coming out at a flow that is not creating erosion. It is not impacting the biological construct of the lagoon in this area with regard to eelgrass, cordgrass, and some of the endangered species that rely on this habitat. So yes, there is an increase in flow during very intense storm events that will come out of the existing pipe. Again, no changes to that outfall pipe, but that is clean water that is coming out in a volume that is not going to affect any of the biology, habitat, water quality, or otherwise in this area.
Okay, thank you. And then next question, has the water been a danger for autos, etc.? Now that we have bumps and 35 miles per hour, is water the real problem? Has the street scrape a requirement to the city for the city to obtain revenue from the new hotel and additional one to come?
So certainly ponded water on the roadway can present a safety hazard if people aren't going slowly, if they're not navigating it responsibly, then yes, it certainly can be a safety hazard. I don't know of any connection between revenue from the hotel and this project. This project is one of many capital projects that is reviewed by City Council and will be prioritized for funding along with the rest of the suite of projects we have coming up in February likely, and then voted on.
Jill, let me add on that.
Thank you.
To the best of, at least to the best of the staff's knowledge, there is no requirement for this project for the city to obtain revenue for the new hotel. And one of the other major issues for the flooding is property damage. And we have many photographs in the file of house and property flooding, which we haven't focused on this evening. But if, on a side note, if anyone wants to see the house and property damage from flooding in Leucadia, we have those photos as well. So it's not just automobile flooding, it's also property and house flooding.
Thank you, Ed. Next question was, the amount of water you said was a small amount. This is a follow-up one. Have you done a hydraulic analysis for the project? Where will the water go? And where does the contaminated water, including the first flush, go?
Yeah, so it sounds like this may be a question from somebody who missed the beginning of the presentation, so my apologies. Yes, we've done a hydrology study so that we can understand the amount of water that is collecting here. First flush water will be directed, all water goes north. First flush water will be directed to the west towards Ponto, so it won't go to Vatican Lagoon.
Okay. Question from Manion. How is the water treated and where?
So the water is treated through stormwater BMPs. So we have things like bioretention basins, dispersion areas, I'm drawing a blank, and landscaping. So we'll have much more landscaping along the corridor with the next Leucadia streetscape project, reducing the pavement width out there. So instead of having 2 lanes in each direction, we'll have 1 lane in each direction plus buffered bike lanes, more landscaping on the edges and the medians. So through those BMPs, which are spread throughout the project limits, that's where we'll see some reduction in pollutant loads.
Okay, next question from John. What is a very intense storm event?
A very intense one. So last year, I think we had something along the lines of a 700-year storm. So a storm that we don't expect to see but once every 700 years, or as the other person said, 1 in 700 chance of happening in a given year. We designed to particular criteria. This one is a 25-year storm event design, but with global warming and changes in the atmosphere, it's tough to predict when big storms will come or how many big storms we'll get in a given year.
Okay, we have a question from Dar. What will be the impact to digging, the depth, and also to the bluff?
No impact to the bluff. So all the digging will occur within the 101 corridor or those adjacent side streets that tie directly to the 101. We have some geologic formations that we expect to encounter in the project, but we'll have appropriate paleontological monitoring to watch the excavation and to alert us if any resources are found and handle them appropriately.
Okay, follow-up question from John. Are you drawing a distinction between Ponto outfalls and Vatican's Lagoon outfalls?
We are. I don't know, Bob, if you want to talk a little bit more about that. Let me see if I can find the slide I'm thinking of with the junction structure.
Yeah, I would actually defer to Joanne for the different outfalls and how they work.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I was trying to make sure I was unmuted. What happens on, I can see on Jill's slide there, if you look on the west side, you can see, well, can we see the west side a little bit? Yeah, where the outfalls come out there, there's a series of detention basins there adjacent to the Ponto Beach parking lot. And that is the distinction. That is where the first flush flows will outlet. And then you can see the higher flows will outlet to the east into the bigger portion of the Vatican Lagoon.
Thank you. Dara's question, was there any consideration to keep in Locadia Funky in discussions regarding this project and streetscape?
Sorry, can you repeat that, Andrew?
Sure. Was there any consideration to keeping Locadia Funky in discussions regarding this project and streetscape?
So this project is just a storm drain. It's underground. The only thing that you'll see at the ground level will be drainage inlets. So we didn't see much opportunity for funkiness in the stormwater design. But throughout the Locadia streetscape design, yes, we did look at areas to incorporate art and to incorporate some of the more fun elements into this roadway design.
I don't see any other questions. I don't know if we want to hang on for just a few minutes just to see if anyone additional pops on the Zoom.
Sure. And again, I want to express my apologies to anybody who was at the wrong place or we misdirected to the wrong Zoom link at the beginning. This Zoom is being recorded, so you will be able to watch the full presentation. But we're happy to take any questions now from anybody who missed some of the project background that we went through earlier.
We did have a question about how do we get a copy of reports, and also maybe just generally how do we get in touch with people as well if they have any follow-up questions.
Yeah, so we have a streetscape email address, and they are very helpful in helping us get the questions to the right people. I am going to stop sharing and see if I can pull up that email address. Bear with me here. It is definitely on the website as well. So like I said, just give me a couple seconds to, yes, it's just Streetscape, STREETSCAPE at encinitasca.gov. So any kind of requests for a copy of this presentation, which is also going to be available online, or for the specific reports, the technical studies, they can go to that web address, and then we'll get you the information that you're looking for.
And then a question, when will this be submitted to the Coastal Commission?
Scott, are you available to address that one?
Yeah, my understanding is that we've had meetings. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, my understanding, we've had meetings with Coastal Commission staff, and my understanding is that they are in the process of reviewing the technical studies. We originally anticipated that they were going to process the coastal development permit for the project, but they requested the city to process it. So that's why we're in this process right now.
And then, okay, we got that. And then follow-up question, where online, I think, can they find these reports?
I am, oh, shoot, I didn't open it. Lillian, do you know off the top of your head? Oh, here it is, sorry. Your website to go to is encinitasca.gov/streetscape. So again, that's encinitasca.gov/streetscape. One word.
Okay. And then follow-up from John was, I think it was clarification to Scott. Have you already submitted it to the Coastal Commission? Is that the answer? I think
Yeah, it was submitted, and the reason why we submitted it to them was to get their input on whether they would process the coastal development permit or the city would, and they determined that the city would process it. So,
and I believe we've also routed to them for review and consideration to the coastal development permit. So. Then no more questions right now, Jill. But we can keep waiting a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll give everyone a couple more minutes.
I think Paul had just posted, he said that the link for Streetscape doesn't work, but you gave an email address, correct?
I gave both. Let me type it in and see if it works for me.
it should be Encinitas CA, correct?
Yeah,
.gov,
encinitasca.gov and then
Yeah.
front
He
slash.
just has he doesn't have the correct spelling.
Got it. Yep, encinitasca.gov /streetscape. Anything else coming in, Andrew?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, maybe we'll give it one more minute to 7:10.
Okay.
All right, well, I wanted to thank everybody for attending this Zoom. I know it's not the face-to-face interaction we would have liked to have had, but we appreciate your feedback and your input. And if you have any follow-up questions, again, that streetscape@encinitasca.gov is the best place to send your requests for information or follow-up questions. Thank you guys all for participating with us tonight. Have a good night.